Okay, so obviously the first thing about restoring a shell is you got to get it drilled. And I've got all this anchored, and luckily this is a type 2 James. So it has a lathe dimple in the top. So we're going to use that as our pilot. I've already got this started. We're going to use the old rope trick. Everybody's already seen this on other videos. I'm not going to use a water pump. I got the water pump and the bucket and all that, but I'm going to get a little risky. I want to try to save this powder. So I'm just going to keep this cool with oil. We'll probably drill a little bit, stop, check it, and add oil to it. But we're going to run this rope out in the pasture. I'm going to lower the doors. I hope I don't blow up because I don't want to ruin my sandblaster here. So we're going to keep this cool with oil and start drilling, and we'll turn on the GoPro so y'all get up close and personal view of this drilling process. Okay, it's time for a reset. We're going to move our rope. We had to move our GoPro for you because this handle was fixing to hit it. Everything's going smooth so far. Okay, I did manage to get some dry gunpowder out of it. We're just going to see. This was at the very end. It had a lot of metal shavings in it, but this is from way down in the bursting cavity, so we're just going to see if this was still burnable. It'll still burn. Burn my fingers. I don't think this stuff's going to burn. Now we'll see if we can get this to burn with a torch. Barely. That stuff wasn't all that potent after all these years, but this field is a really damp field. A lot of times during the year it's just saturated and just gooey. And so that's probably why this shell's gunpowder didn't burn like that second shell I found, because it came from a different field. I got quite a bit of this gunpowder out, and I was digging in there with this dental pick, and we got some piece of cloth that came out of that shell. I'm not sure what this was for in there. That 152-year-old piece of cloth. That's pretty cool. I'm just going to keep it with the powder. It came out of the bursting chamber. Just like in my first 2 James shells, I threaded the drill hole. You don't have to. On the other James shells, I threaded them because I get a better connection with the lead for the electrolysis. You can put a bolt in it. But since this is a type 2, it actually makes sense to go ahead and thread your drill hole, because if you want to display this shell upright with this small tapered base, it's not going to stand up very long before somebody bumps the table or your display. It's going to fall over. So with the hole threaded, we can build us a display case, and we can run a bolt through the bottom to hold this thing upright from falling over, because you can see it doesn't stand up very well on that narrow base. So we got this drilled out, threaded, got a lot of the gunpowder out, but you know there's going to be a whole bunch more left in there, so the rest of this we'll just flush out with the water nozzle. See if we can do this without making a mess. Ooh, look at the gunpowder still in there. Okay, we got our lead attached to the shell. We've got our bucket of solution, which is just Arm & Hammer washing soda. I'm going to use a piece of Inconel tubing that I had laying around for our sacrificial anode this time. My plate's getting so rusty it ain't even making contact anymore. So we'll try this, get this shell cooking, and we'll take it out and check on it in a couple of days. Well, our Inconel's making good contact. We got lots of bubbles coming off of the shell, running about 4 amps. So that'll get us started. I really hate to have to electrolysis this shell with the sabot on it, because I wanted to keep that white patina on that lead, but I don't know of any other way of doing it. You can't get the sabot off in one piece, and I don't want to destroy it. I do want to leave it intact. So I guess we'll just have to sacrifice the white patina. We'll see what happens. Okay, it's been a couple of days. The James shell has been in the electrolysis. As you can see, now our amps are down to just a little over 1, between 1 and 2 amps. So we're going to have to add some more of the washing soda, but that's normal. You'll have to keep adding as you go along, and then occasionally I'll switch out the water. Like on the last James shells, it took 20 something days to get it clean. I had to change the water out quite a bit. So let's just see where we're at here. See, we got a lot of that big stuff is sloughed off, and as expected, that white patina, the lead carbonate, was the first thing to come off. They don't look as bad as I expected. I was afraid it'd get way too clean, but I bet it's gonna end up looking, the lead will look dark gray, kind of like the relics that are recovered from river sites. So that's not too bad. I would have liked to have had the lead white, but there's just literally no way that we could have done that I could think of, because when these James shells were made, this lead was cast in between these fins. So if we wanted to remove this, we would have practically destroyed it. If we would have wanted to try to save the white patina, clean the shell separate from the lead, I just don't think there's any way we could have done that and put the lead back. So we had to sacrifice the white patina, but that's minor, I guess. Okay, I'm going to start chipping off some of this big stuff. Like I said in my last James shell restoration video, it's easier to chip this rusty crusted stuff out if you'll let the shell dry, because it starts to shrink and this stuff will contract and get brittle and it pops out easier. But the weather's bad. I'm going to go ahead and chip some of this out tonight as much as I can, because I'm not going to be coming out here. I don't have time to let this dry right now and then run back and forth in this bad weather. I don't even want to. So I'm going to chip off what I can tonight and then put this back in the tank. And then we'll check on it when this weather clears up. It's just drizzly and cold and rainy, and it's a muddy mess to get from the house to the shop. So we'll just let this cook until the weather gets good. Okay, I just chipped off all the easy stuff, whatever would come loose. I knocked it off. I was just using an old ice pick and a little chisel and just lightly tap some of this stuff. If it comes off, great. If it don't, I don't worry about it. I'm just going to put it back in the tank and let the electrolysis do all the work. What I was definitely trying to be careful of is I don't want to hit this lead and make it shiny. I just want to keep it dull gray, and hopefully when we're done with this whole process it'll still look old and rustic. It does have some of the white left down here and a little bit up here and here. But these type 2 shells look like they're going to be a lot easier to clean than them type 1s, because all we got to do is just clean these fins out. This is what's going to take the time, because these things, this is like concrete in there. But on those type 2s, or the type 1s, with that being a closed bird cage, it is a real chore to get that bottom cage cleaned out. This one has a dimple in the nose cone. I don't know if it got damaged when it hit or what's happened here. It looks like the percussion cap's in good shape. That should clean up pretty good. Okay, I'm gonna put this back in the tank and we'll check on it in a few more days. Okay, this is day 5 of the shell cleaning. I took it out of the electrolysis and I chipped away what corrosion was coming loose, but right now I'm just going to stick it in the oven under low heat to get this good and dry, because it'll help some of this heavy corrosion contract and get brittle. We'll chip off what we can, but also while it's dry, I'll do a sandblast on it. That's not absolutely necessary, but it does help show you where you need to work, because it'll make the shell nice and shiny, but everywhere there's corrosion it'll either be a dull gray or a black, and that shows you where you still need to be focusing your efforts. I did take the screw out so this will vent properly, and we'll just leave this in here for a couple of hours on like 150. Okay, out of the oven and onto the workbench. You can see how dry we've got it. It's all chalky, and at this point what I'll do is I'll take this Dremel with the small round burr and I'll just run it up and down these fins. Whenever you get to the metal, this burr won't actually dig into this cast iron. It'll just sit here and chatter. You can see where I already did a little bit and it got a little bit shiny. That's when you know you've gotten past the corrosion, you finally got down to the metal, and it'll kind of stop and just sit here and chatter, and you know you've gotten down to the shell, and you can just move forward and keep working this. Now this, you can't just sit here and grind all this out because this stuff is really hard, but you can knock off this loose stuff, and then of course we'll go back into the electrolysis and just keep repeating this process and take this corrosion off layer at a time. You can see our lead's looking pretty good. It's not too clean. That's what I was afraid of, is it get too clean. I've been trying to loosen this up in here and just kind of pick that out with a dental pick without digging into the lead and making a clean spot. You don't want to do that. So I've been slowly picking away at this. Every time it comes out of electrolysis, a little more will come loose. You can see this stuff's anchored pretty good, so we'll just wait until it soaks for a couple more days, and then we'll get it out and see how much more of this we can get off. I didn't sandblast it yet because I may wait on sandblasting it, because that's going to be pretty involved. I'm going to have to tape off this sabot. I don't want this blast media to hit this and make it satiny and shiny. So I'm going to keep electrolysis, and then we'll keep doing the burr and then the little chisel, picking off the parts we can knock off, and then in a day or two we might go ahead and sandblast it. Okay, it's been about 8 days, I think, 8 or 9 days since I've had the camera on. All I've done is just repeat that same process that I showed y'all earlier. So it comes out of electrolysis. You just use a little punch or a little chisel and you chip away in these fins and get all that hard, heavy corrosion chipped out. I also use the Dremel tool with the little burr on it to get in the hard to reach places. Then I would put it back in electrolysis. So we've repeated that probably about every other day. So this is probably about 4 times since I've had the camera on last, and I think I've got it to the point where it's time to either, if you don't have a sandblaster, you can go ahead and wire brush this real good and then put your protective coating on it. But you can see these nice clean lines. We really got all that corrosion out of there. I think I would have been done with this shell, you know, several days ago if it hadn't been for this lead sabot, because I assumed in the beginning that James Type 2 shell would be a lot faster to clean than James Type 1, because these fins are open, and this wasn't near as hard as it was on those Type 1 shells I found. But with the lead being on it, trying to work all that corrosion out down, you're not going to be able to see it, but this goes quite a ways back in there. Trying to get all this out and clean all around this lead without bumping the lead with your tool or nicking it with a dental pick and making it shiny. It was tedious. It was time consuming. I wanted to keep this lead dull and kind of dirty looking. And so that's what really slowed me down. But I really like the way it turned out. I wish we could have kept that white lead carbonate on the surface, like all the bullets we dig, that nice white color. But I knew that wasn't going to happen. But I did learn something, or I did some experiment. Let me show you. It doesn't work completely, but it's something we can investigate. I read that if you could paint vinegar onto lead and it would create lead carbonate. So this is a modern cast bullet I had laying around, and I put vinegar on the top of it last night, and then I just let it dry out. When you paint it on, it don't look like it's going to do much, but when it dries out, it did make it somewhat white. It created a thin layer of lead carbonate. So, but here's the problem. It hasn't had time to really attach to the lead surface like a Civil War bullet being buried in the ground for 154 years. So what I was thinking when I read that is, well, we could paint some vinegar on here, and if it turns it white, then we'll just keep adding coats till we get it where we want it, and then we'll clear coat it to make it more permanent. The problem is, when I went to paint another coat of vinegar on this bullet, it just basically washed off that first layer of lead carbonate we've already created. So basically, until we figure out something, you only get one coat of vinegar, and whatever lead carbonate you get out of that first coat, that's all you're going to get, because the next coat will just wash it right back off again. You got to start over. So I don't know. I'm still debating. I might just once I get all this finished, we might just mist this with a light coating of vinegar and just see what we can get out of it. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. I don't know what we're going to do with this. Another thing, I think I'm at a point where I'm going to go ahead and sandblast this shell. If you didn't have a sandblaster, you don't have a sandblaster, these pockets right here, these dimples where it's the corrosion is eaten away, it's just full of that powdery residue from all this cleaning. And you could use a smaller brush, maybe one in a Dremel, if you don't have a sandblaster, to kind of get in there and clean them out. This one, I have the big wire wheel on the desk, or the shop grinder, and it just kind of goes over these dimples. It don't get down in there. So I'm going to use a sandblaster to speed this up. I'm going to tape off the lead. We don't want none of the blast media hitting that. I'm going to tape off the percussion cap. This cap had a lot more red in it than my first type 1s, and I don't like that red or orangey colored brass, so I did go ahead and polish this down below that red layer. And what happens, brass is an alloy, so sometimes the micro surface, I guess you'll say, I don't know the technical terms, you'll lose that very outer coating of the brass will erode away and just leave that the copper alloys and stuff, and that's why these things get real red. So you kind of have to buff it below that copper layer and get back down to the full brass mixture, so you get that yellow coloring back. So this one had to be polished because I didn't want that reddish brass colored cap. We got the safety wire on this one, it's still showing, so that one cleaned up nice. So we're going to get this in the sandblaster so that I can get all these pockets out, and then that will tell us if I've gotten all this corrosion off, because the sandblaster will make this nice and shiny, and everywhere it's dull or it has a black spots, it's stuff we need to work on. But if it's clean, if it's ready, we're going to try a new preservative, and I'll explain what we're going to use on this shell and why. as soon as we get this out of the sandblaster. I must say, taping that sabot off, that was not fun. Tape doesn't want to really stick to dirty lead. But I want to make sure that we don't make that sabot shiny. I want it to at least look old and dull, since we've lost our white coloration. Okay, get this thing sandblasted and see what we got. Okay, after sandblasting, you can really see that we do have a few more places. You can see right, I don't know, there may be a shadow. Anyway, it's dark right here. Right along the inside of that fin. We got little spots here and here. This stuff should chip off pretty easy. I don't think it's going to have to go back into electrolysis. We got a lot right in here, but that was hard to clean without hitting that lid, but I'll work on it some more. Okay, we almost forgot about the bursting chamber. I don't know what I was thinking. So I guess we're going to use a dual preservation technique. We are going to use a tannic acid inside the shell. So I'm going to fill this bursting chamber up with that, dump it out, let it set, and then we'll go to the POR 15 for the exterior. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and summarize this POR 15 process. Even though they have their own video. So basically you degrease the shell with their degreaser, and then you prep the metal with their metal prep solution. And after this is dry, that's when we apply the actual POR 15. So we know while that's drying, we're going to get rid of our electrolysis solution and clean our bucket up. But look at this. This pipe that I used is Inconel. So this is the stuff they use on nuclear submarine fittings and stuff. It's a really expensive metal, but you can see after that, I don't really know how many days we spent electrolysis, maybe 10 or 12, but it eat the bottom of this clean up. I got lucky enough, and I had a friend of mine at a machine shop give me a bunch of this, so these are sacrificial, so this one is done for. We'll just get another piece the next time hopefully we'll find another artillery shell. So after this dries, we're going to apply our top coat. Well, the weather has taken a turn for the worst. All of a sudden it is cold and damp. So we had to move our POR 15 project into the house. I wanted to show you all an added bonus of threading the bottom of the shell. Where we drilled it is I was able to take a big old plate off of our hydraulic press, put a bolt in it, and now the shell, you can just mount it and spin it to work on it, putting this protective coating on it. So I don't know, it's really shiny. We're gonna have to do something about that, but we're getting there. Okay, well, we got the shell finished and got the mess cleaned up in here, and I think it turned out really good. The percussion cap is in really good shape. I'm glad to see that. The safety wire will be visible on this one. The lead, it didn't turn out too bad. It's nice and dark. Got some patches of the white, but I mean, it'd been great to have it, you know, this color. But that just wasn't an option. But still, I don't think it looks that bad. At least it don't look new and shiny. That's what I was afraid of. So that turned out good. The final coat on this was a clear satin to kind of dull down that high gloss POR 15. Now POR 15 does come in a semi-gloss. I got the high gloss just because it was cheaper, and I knew I could tone that down with some satin. I still think the semi-gloss would probably be too shiny anyway for my taste. I don't want my relics to be like super shiny or have like this gloss plastic coating look on them. So that's why I really like a satin clear coat to protect this outer finish. So there it is, the finished James Type 2. I also did the canister shot from this trip. This is tannic acid on these. and they're nice and black. And this is everything that we got from that trip. We've already summed it up in a different video. Here's the powder out of the shell and that piece of cloth. I think that this might have just had pre-measured powder charges they stuffed there, maybe in a small cloth bag. That's the only reason I can think that there'd be cloth in that that shell. But it's pretty cool that we got to save a piece of it, whatever it is. So there it is. We will see y'all in the next video.